Hey everyone, it's Monica. Welcome back to my Bible journaling channel. It is Memory Verse Monday today, and today's memory verse mixed with one of my honey templates inspired me to do this 2-page spread. So before I get started, let me just read to you the memory verses for the week, verse 13 and 14 of Psalm 19. They say, "Keep back your servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then I shall be blameless and innocent of great transgression. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer." So as I mentioned, I had sort of double inspiration working on this page today. You can see my template there on the right side, and I'm just going in and touching up my tracing a bit. I'm also changing something about my template. I had the honeycomb pattern behind the words, and now I'm adding the honeycomb around the words instead. And I'm also going to be adding the same honeycomb pattern in a couple other areas around these 2 pages. I was trying to figure out how to tie these 2 pages together because I feel like the thoughts in these verses are actually very connected, even though they have a couple verses in between them. I think they're still on the same topic, so we'll talk about that as we go along a little bit. The first step after pencil sketching is I'm just going in with one of my Faber-Castell PITT Artist pens. This is a fine point one in the color Sanguine, and I use it for outlining things when I don't feel like using black. So because this page is going to have a lot of warm browns and honey colors on it, I felt like black wouldn't be the way to go with the honeycomb. So I'm going in with this PITT pen in Sanguine instead, and it's just kind of a nice, more neutral brownish reddish color. As I'm working on this, I just want to give you a little bit of background here. The sweeter also than honey and drippings from the honeycomb actually comes before the other verse that I've written on the left-hand page. So they're sort of in reverse order, which doesn't really bother me. And the sweeter also than honey and drippings from the honeycomb actually refers to the subject of these several verses, which is the law of the Lord, the words of the Lord, the testimony of the Lord. And for us, we can think of that as the Bible. We can think of that as these scriptures that we hold in our hands. These things are sweeter than honey and drippings from the honeycomb in our lives. They are so valuable. And so bouncing off of that verse, I went over and wrote out a following verse. "Let the words of my mouth and meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer." The word of God, the words of God, are transformative in our lives. So I feel like if we do want our words and even our thoughts to be pleasing to God, we ought to be partaking of this sweet drippings from the honeycomb that we hold in our hands. I got a little bit ahead of myself there and got my watercolor crayons out to be ready, and then remembered, oh, my honeybees all over the page. I knew I wanted 3 or 4 honeybees sort of floating around this page to tie this all together. Perhaps they're gathering their pollen from the daisies on the left and taking it back to their honeycomb. And again, that's just an element on the page to try to bring these 2 pages together into one. So I've now selected 4 different colors, and I'm going to start on the drippings of honey, and then I'm going to move to the honeycomb on the page. And you can see on the honey, the medium brown is playing the part of the shadow or the shading, and then the honey brown is the predominant color. And as I move into the honeycomb, I'm using this really dark brown just along the right edge of each one of these hexagons to add some fun dimension. I then grabbed the reddish brown color to again add dimension by allowing there to be some dark colors on this honeycomb. And then I definitely wanted to utilize this nice bright cheery yellow as sort of the highlight. So I'm basically just lining the left side of each one of these hexagons with the yellow, and that's going to just allow these to have some light and some dark and to add some interest so that they're not so flat. Here I'm going in with the final honey color, which makes up the majority of the hexagon shape. Then I'm going to just go in with some clean water on a brush and begin to blend this out. Now I started first by doing a chunk of these hexagons all at once, and I really found it was much easier to do them one at a time. And so I ended up switching to that technique where I went in one at a time and first blended out the lightest colors and then worked over to the darker edges. And then sometimes I would add a bit more water just to smooth out the transition from light to dark. And that's how I got these looking pretty nice and smooth. I'm happy with them at least. They are imperfect, but that's okay. So one thing that I have talked about before in videos is just this desire that I had for so many years to have a deeper understanding, a deeper love, a deeper relationship with the Word of God. And Bible journaling has really helped me with that. So as I'm coloring here and adding all these artistic elements onto the page of the Bible, I'm really just thinking about how sweet it really has been to interact with the Word of God this way. And I'm asking the Lord to please use His words to transform my heart, to help my words, to help my thoughts be pleasing to Him. And that is no easy task, at least for me. And just being an imperfect person, an imperfect daughter of the King, I felt like this page was really ministering to me as I worked on it. And I hope and I trust that because I'm choosing to try to be in the Word and to develop my love of the Word, I'm really hoping that the Lord will continue to soften me and change me and transform me into a daughter of His that more resembles Him. I'm now moving over to the greenery on the left-hand side there, the leaves, and I love coloring things with a few different tones of the same color. I hardly ever go in with just one color. So you saw that I did the stems and the leaves in the light color first, then the medium, then the dark. And then it's very simple. I just go over those same places with my brush, the light, the medium, and the dark. And here's my boulder that I wanted to be sure was on this page. The Lord is our rock and our redeemer. That means we can count on Him and He saves us. And I'm so thankful for that in my life because of those imperfections that I have. I am so thankful to be redeemed by Him. Now these flowers, I wanted them to be white, which is a little tricky, but I did have a white watercolor pencil, and then I just used light gray to add a little bit of depth and dimension to the petals. And you can see, I think they came out actually looking a little bit white, even though they're on a mostly white Bible page. The next step here is to go in and touch up my little honeybees, and I decided to go ahead and use my Faber-Castell PITT Artist pens. These are the brush tip ones, and I just thought the watercolor crayons would be a bit challenging on these little guys, and so I'm just using some yellows and some browns and then finally a really dark gray to add their little stripes, and a light gray on their wings to add a bit of color to them so that they don't just disappear on the page. One of the last things I did was to just go over my lettering on the right side in this darker brown. I felt like the initial lighter brown was getting a little bit lost, and I didn't want to lose one of the themes from Psalm 19 here about the words of God being sweeter than honey. I did want to show you the other sides of the page. This page isn't prepped at all, and really the only place that there's bleeding is those little stripes on the honeybees with my brush pens. That's where the bleeding has come through. The rest is just shadowing, which you're working on a thin Bible page, and you should be able to see things on the other side of it. I hope that you enjoyed this. I really did. I just love being able to interact with the Word of God and really put these verses into my heart and into my mind. My prayer for you, my prayer for me, is that we can just become more and more pleasing followers of Jesus every day. I hope that you jump into the Bible for yourself. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below, and have a wonderful day. I will see you next time.